All right, we're live. This is the Strong Calm podcast where we talk strong communication, strong community building, and how those two things build strong company, whether that's the company that you created or the company that you keep. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Ken Reid at Honest Christian. What's up?
Hey man.
Hey, man. What's going on?
Yeah, just hanging, bro.
Just hanging. How's your day going?
It's going well.
Awesome. As close to your talker
Close,
as possible.
I gotta wrap my leg around the leg. Wrap my leg around the leg.
Awesome. So for those of the listenership and the viewership that don't know, who are you? Like, what do you do?
So I do a little bit of everything. So I am a husband, a dad. I also office administrator on the 8 to 5, I suppose. But then on the side, I do lots of types of writing. I do music. So I play music. I do all that kind of stuff. But the passion, I suppose, what I care about is I'm a writer. So that's everything from blogging to copywriting to SEO to just about anything pertaining to writing. I'm all about it. So I have a personal blog called Honest Christian, honestchristian.org. And then I also have just a bunch of side gigs, a couple publications I'm writing for, all that kind of stuff. So
Awesome. So you're a writer. Is your main passion, your main gig, I would say, is fatherhood.
yes.
And then you work, like, what's your main gig? Because you do a lot of writing.
Mhm.
We've talked about that, freelancing and that kind of jazz. Is that your main, like, business, or are you working somewhere too?
No, I'm working somewhere during the day.
Mhm.
Um,
And
yeah.
you blog on the side.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yep.
So we got connected through co.work here in Tyler for the first time.
Yeah.
We met at one of the power lunch hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I kept seeing an invite on Facebook. I was like, I might as well go show up and see if I can meet somebody.
Yeah.
And I did.
Right. Now you're stuck with me.
Yeah.
Here, get as close as you can. So we've chatted before about because we share common interests, quite a few common interests, especially in writing.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, focused mostly on poetry and stuff, but you're really focused on the business of writing, you would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a weird mix, I suppose you'd say. A lot of the things I really care about is going to be pertaining to my faith and everything, but then not just oh, here's my personal blog about my thoughts or whatever, but like really learning how to monetize that and market it well. So yeah, definitely business from a business perspective.
Yeah, you're
So,
intentional about
yeah,
growing it.
totally.
So how long have you been writing, and like how long have you been writing, and how long has Honest Christian kind of been a thing?
Yeah. So as far as how long I've been writing, I think it's one of those things that like I didn't realize I was writing for a very long time, and then it was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing. So I've always been coming up with content ideas and different things. I would mow the grass at 11, 12 years old and be speaking to some audience in my head somehow, and everything, and so everything pertaining to imaginary or whatever, but I feel like there's always been something along those lines in the background. But really about 2 years ago, I was just kind of at a place where I was looking for a change, and I was in school, had to take a semester off because my daughter was about to be born, and was like, well, I want to really, still pursue something hard. And
Mhm.
so I was like, what if I started a blog and just see what happens? And that was probably maybe 2.5 years ago. I guess 2 years ago. She's a year and a half now. So yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah, a lot of really surprising opportunities came out of it. So,
Like what?
so basically, I kind of probably got frustrated right off the bat. I'm like, "Ugh, why are only like 5 people reading my stuff, you know? And so I just would start Googling stuff, and I would contact other bloggers that I was influenced by or whatever come across. Be like, hey, you've grown your audience. Can you give me some advice, whatever? And so just the more that I would seek ideas and stuff, it ultimately came down to not writing for yourself. Like really, excuse me, really writing with a for other people, and maybe even more practically like for other publications. And so, I kind of discovered this idea of guest posting, guest blogging. I was like, okay. And so instead of writing for my own blog, I was like, well, I'll pitch some of this stuff to large publications. And weirdly enough, a couple of them was like, sure. And so yeah, it just led to a lot bigger audience, a lot bigger influence, and a couple paid opportunities and stuff like that. So
Awesome. So just awesome. So your natural curiosity got sounds not working. Do this. Sounds not working on the Facebook for some reason. Might just have to end it. So you got curious about how to navigate in the blogosphere, because at last count that I heard was there was 1 billion blogs.
is there?
Yeah, there's 1 billion blogs
Sounds
on the
familiar.
internet now.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure.
which is insane. So, you started the climb,
Yeah.
pretty late in the game, I guess you'd say.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's
for
a
sure.
lot of people out there that say, they confront that data. They say 1 billion blogs, how am I going to stand out?
Oh yeah, it's over.
And then, yeah, it's over before you even start.
Mm-hmm.
But you're having success in 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first blog that kind of picked you up?
That's a good question. So, yeah, the first publication was Relevant. It's called relevantmagazine.com, I guess. And yeah, huge publication specifically within the Christian culture or whatever. But yeah, they really really big, and basically I read their guidelines and was like, here's how to submit a guest post or whatever, and I did it and never got a response. So I did it again. Never get a response. I don't know how many times it took, probably 5 or 6, but at some point they were like, "Hey, we'll post this." I was like, "What?" So yeah,
Awesome. So Relevant Magazine was
yeah.
the first, and that's a huge publication for
Yeah.
the Christian.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's
segment,
like,
I guess.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say like 5 million readers a month or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
A
So
lot more than I have.
so when that happened, what'd you think?
Oh, dude, actually, so I think I actually remember getting the response was like, because it took about a week to respond. And so it was like, I felt really good about it. I was like, okay, this is going to be the one. I've been studying, been like figuring out what's the type of stuff that works for them and all this kind of stuff. This is going to be it. And I send it in and nothing happens for like 5 or 6 days. And I was like, dude, I was just getting really frustrated and discouraged and everything. And then I think I don't remember if I like probably texted some of my friends, maybe my wife, and just like ranted like, it's all rigged, blah blah blah. And then like probably within an hour or two, I randomly got an email. Hey, this is great. I'll post it. It's like 2 sentences, but we're like,
That's incredible.
oh, okay.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. And then off to the races.
yeah, totally.
Just having some technical, so I'm doing some editing. So what was that first post that they picked up?
Oh, I honestly don't remember. It was, let's see, what was it? It was, it might have been about, it was either about marriage or about the church.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I had several that kind of got posted like pretty quick, in tandem. So yeah, I don't really remember which one was first, but I want to say it was either the one about marriage or the one about the church. So yeah, the title of the marriage one, I guess you could say clickbaity or whatever, is two words that can end your marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, basically the premise was this idea of the two words are the one. So the idea of like when you come in with all these expectations of your marriage, like, oh, they're the one, they're perfect for me, everything, we're just this perfect fit and everything, like that is recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Sounds like a good article.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, they thought so.
Yeah. If it's good for relevant, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So that was kind of the first thing, and then you said, okay, maybe that must have instilled some confidence in you.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So Honest Christian came about after that? Was that? Or you had started the blog, and then that picked up steam, and then did you say, okay, well, like what happened after that was your kind of next step? Did you say, let's just double, triple down? Or did you say, let's try to get everybody that's reading this to Honest Christian now?
Yeah. So that's a good question. There was strategy for sure, but there was also a lot of like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So really, honestly, the biggest thing that happened was I basically was like, hey, that works. I'll just keep doing it. So I ended up that's all I would do. I might have submitted a couple of articles to other publications. Maybe one or two was picked up. But at the end of the day, I was like, relevant is the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no reason for me to, go with these secondary publications just because.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just continued going with relevant. And at some point, I think they changed how they did things and stuff. And so they weren't accepting my stuff anymore. Not nearly as frequently anyway.
Right.
But that opportunity, so I think basically what ended up happening was another publication called Lightworkers, which you probably haven't heard of. They're only about a year old, but they are a kind of the Christian branch of MGM Studios. So they're a part of MGM.
Okay.
And I think they basically found one of my articles on Relevant, and I randomly got an email from the editor. Hey, we really love your stuff. We'd like you to be a editing contributor, I think is what they're contributing editor. And I was like, what is a contributing editor?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was spam or something, like I had gotten emails like that before, like, okay, whatever. I looked it up and I was like, well, it's a real website. It looks legit, So anyway, yeah, talked to the editor on the phone, and she was like, yeah, really like what you're doing. We pay $50 an article, 500 to 700 words. What do you think? And I was like, wait, like you're going to give me money to write? So those kind of my first, because Relevant basically pays in influence, like
sure,
you get your name out there, which is awesome. But it was kind of that first step into like, oh wow, people will give me money for the things I have to say. Like, it was a game changer in the way I thought about what I was doing, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I would imagine. Well, that's exciting. So we were talking a little bit before we started recording about the current traffic that you experience on honestchristian.org.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about that. So you've had some work really perform really well. What are the kind of the numbers behind it, just to give people an idea?
Yeah. So right now I have about 10,000 visitors per month on my blog, which is awesome. Like 97%, I'm going to say, are coming to one single blog post through Google. And if you want, that could be a segue. But basically, all through people Googling stuff, I just really tightened up my search engine optimization, SEO, and that was honestly the first time I'd ever even tried SEO. And I was like, I don't know, I'll just give it a try, I guess, and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're really starting to kind of build some steam, build some momentum, and then it's like one thing after another. One opportunity then leads to another opportunity, and then leads to, and then all the while your skills increasing because you get these new opportunities.
Yeah,
and it really gives you this. It's a snowball effect, essentially. Yeah,
totally. And I think really just realizing that you should always be pursuing more than one thing, like. Because it was, I kind of mentioned before, that I didn't know what I was doing. So it's like, well, Relevant's picking up my stuff. I guess I'll just keep submitting to Relevant, you know? But basically realizing like fairly quickly, I mean, you can go with, you know, here's your single stream or whatever, or you can be like, well, just branch out, kind of scatter your seed, I suppose. And so trying to figure out how to increase everything. Like, okay, let's publish with large publications, but then let's also do search engine optimization. Let's also, you know, and so just kind of trying to find different streams of growing your audience and everything. So
just learning different disciplines to kind of complement when one's down. Yeah, you know, the other one can kind of come up and support, and then next thing you know, you've got. It's kind of like if you were to use a metaphor of like a tree branches out roots and digs a lot of roots to make sure that, you know, if a wind comes from one direction, it's not going to topple it over because all the roots on the other end. I think that's how trees work. I don't know. Yeah, but, sounds right to me. Something like that. Yeah. So, well, that's awesome. So just kind of an ongoing learning experience. So, you know, if you were to give advice to a young blogger or a blogger that's, you know, just starting out, or a blogger that, you know, is finding that frustration that you had in your early days, and you're still kind of early in it, 2 years in to, you know, really intentionally trying to learn the game. Can you give some insight into the game? Like, you know, because there's plenty of times where I felt like, well, I want to say this, but I know it won't perform well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what's the balance between the science of good blog writing and the art of good blog writing? Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a good question. So I'll say first of all, like kind of how to strategically, you know, go about like growing your influence and I guess like you said, kind of working the game, if you will. So the publication that I write for, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I'll just say, so the publication that I write for, I was looking through some of their blogs one day and basically ended up coming across one that I was like, okay, this title looks interesting. And I read it and it was not good at all. And so I was just like, what is going on? And like, how in the world is this person getting these opportunities and stuff? Like, I don't understand. And so I decided to click on the person's bio. And when I did, it like said, mentioned the person's name. So-and-so is the best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how in the world? Like, this makes no sense, you know. She is not a good writer at all. And so the honest Christian coming through with the strong calm.
I know, sorry. I was so dumbfounded, and I'm not going to tell you who this person was, but I should have recognized her last name. That's all I'll say. Yeah. So I Googled this person. I was like, who is this? And come to find out, she is the daughter of you would know exactly who I'm talking about if I mentioned, you know. And so I'm like, so it kind of hit me. I've thought about this before, but it basically hit me is this idea that like, if you want to be successful, you have to borrow success from others, right? And so that's really playing the game. Is that's the reason why, you know, if I post a blog on my personal thing, I'm, you know, on a good day, I'll get maybe 100, 200 people watching it, reading it, whatever. That's great. As opposed to I can, you know, share with a publication and all of a sudden 5,000 social media shares. Huge difference, right? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I mean, that's ultimately, you know, kind of you can write for yourself, or you can, you know, try to gain your own success. But successful people are not successful because they were just nobodies that were really good at what they did. You should be really good at what you do. But the other side of that is, I suppose you could say it's who you know, or whatever, but you're borrowing success from others. So for me, I'm borrowing success from other publications. You know, I'm posting guest blogs and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like you are, you're borrowing success from others in order to gain your own influence.
Man, that's a great point. That is a great point, and I talk about it a lot. The last podcast was about relationships.
Yeah.
I talk about how, you can't do everything in a vacuum. You can't do
Right.
you can only do so much. You can only get so far by yourself and with your own talent.
Yeah.
It takes other people. I mean, this podcast wouldn't happen without you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So in a lot of ways, it's the same thing. I'm trying to borrow from your success because you have specialized knowledge that I don't have.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of this podcast is figuring out how to help other people with their communication, their community building,
Right.
based on their specialized knowledge.
Yeah.
And then share alike,
Oh, yeah.
It's such an important point. So that's an excellent way to say it. Borrow from other people's success. You borrowed from the influence and trust that Relevant has developed over the past years. Also, though, you borrowed from Google
Oh, totally.
and their success.
Yeah.
Because, it wouldn't be possible to be discovered if you didn't have a way to get discovered.
Yeah.
And I mean, it comes down to you got to learn the game.
Oh, yeah.
And there's billions of blogs that
Right.
can help you with search engine optimization, but you've done the work. You put in the work to say, okay, well, what does make a clickable title? What does make a something get discovered via a search engine? That kind of thing. Playing the long tail, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I'll mention a third stream is this was not me. This was someone pursued me, and I was like, that's an interesting idea. I'm working on building my email list as well. It's, that's what all bloggers are told to do. Hey, you got to build your email list. So I was like, okay, I'll build my email list, So I started, and a big part of that is most of that, probably half of it, has come through that one article that I'm, is on Google and everything. But then a lot of it is also through guest blogs. People will read it and they'll go, hey, this is interesting. They'll scroll down, see my bio, and they'll click on my thing, and they'll sign up. But then another part of it is what you were saying about relationships. I've partnered with other bloggers where we will share, so if I've written like a little 10-page ebook or whatever, that I'm giving away for free, and I'll swap with another blogger. Hey, I'll share yours and you share mine, and so basically I'm gaining, 100 of their followers now, to my email list and vice versa.
Yeah.
And, I think, is it John Acuff, author? If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's awesome. Says relationships get you the first gig. And, I've totally seen that and proved that over and over for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great tactics too. Strong, calm, for show.
Oh yeah.
So let's transition a little bit to community. So strong, calm communication leads to that community building, and kind of along the same lines of building relationships. The community that you're serving with your writing is the Christian. Who's your audience? Yeah, I mean, they're Christians most of the time.
Yeah, theoretically. So that's a good question. I think I've honestly gone back and forth with who is my audience. And I suppose I should say this, there's really two answers to that. There's who is my current audience, and then who is my target audience,
Okay.
So my current audience, I think, is primarily, I don't want to throw out just blanket terms, but just to kind of give you an idea, is probably going to be more along the lines of your conservative Christian, and so the person that you would run into at church on Sunday, my target audience, I suppose, is probably not necessarily non-Christians, but people who are just kind of struggling and being like, man, I've got these frustrations and, struggling with doubt and failure or whatever it is, and just really struggling. And so, maybe they haven't been in church for a long time. They are not, they're just not feeling connected with the church, with God, whatever, and just really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would say that's my target audience. And I have some of them, but really I think a lot of who my current audience is just relationships that I already had, that just have really helped me to build where I'm at so far. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it, growing up in the church myself, I think that there's a lot of crossover in that audience.
Totally.
In terms of, when you're walking the faith, there's going to be times where you kind of go back to, what you stated is your target audience, or the people that are struggling or what have you, or have some doubts, because that could literally be, today and then tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You could vacillate between the two. I'm probably fitting in the the target category, if I was to be honest with you. But I think that it's all, one thing that I've learned just in my life is that everything comes in time. It's just there were times where I was a youth pastor before. I've been a youth pastor and really led young people. Shout out to them. And that was a transformative experience for me in terms of, learning about leadership and who I was as a person, and, who young people are, and like growth in faith in general, But then, as I've gotten older, I've, vacillated back and forth, but I still see so much value in Christianity in a day where it's, a crazy time, for anybody, regardless of faith or not. It's a crazy time, but it's hard to be a Christian sometimes, like these days, I would say. I think it's fair to say that. Because it's very easy to it's attacked a lot. We're getting into a pretty big, dense, complicated subject, but it's something that I see regardless of the problems, and we could always name thousands, we can name thousands of problems with the modern church or what have you. There's still so much value that I have in my personal experience that I see just based off my personal experience because of the way I was brought up. And, it provides such growth potential for a person. The church does, when it works properly, when everything's, how it should be, I would say. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, and people aren't perfect regardless.
Ugh, do you hate that?
Yeah, it's frustrating. Now you're not native East Texan, are you? Is that right?
No, I'm from North Carolina.
North Carolina. So, how long have you been in Tyler?
I want to say I've been in East Texas, Smith County, for 12 years, I think. Been in Tyler probably 8 or so. I was in Lindale, but
okay. So you've been here for a while. You got here from how'd you get here?
So there was an internship called Teen Mania. Doesn't exist anymore, long gone. But yeah, I was a part of that internship. They used to put on big conferences, youth conferences around America and everything, and so I would go in my, in North Carolina, and they're like, hey, we have this internship. You should come if you're graduated. And I was like, I'm graduating, and that sounds cool. And so I decided to move 1,000 miles away.
And now you're here.
Yeah.
So as far as we kind of touched around this off air. So your read on East Texas church culture, I've always felt that East Texas is the belt buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Very, this is definitely Jesus country.
Oh yeah.
If you're going to put it kind of flip. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's really not. It's not that different than where I'm from. So really all along the Bible Belt, I guess you could call it. I think it's all fairly similar. Definitely, I would probably call Tyler the buckle for sure. So it's the epitome of that. But I think it's not that different than where I'm from. As far as, well, you're just asking me to describe the culture. Is that your?
No. Not to describe it necessarily, but I guess maybe to put a finer point on kind of where I'm going is that Tyler is unique in that it has a lot of churches, hundreds of churches.
Yeah.
And there's been a few times where I see, new pastors or what have you, or new church planters that for, I've met many are friends of mine and things. And the first thing I always ask them is, why are you building another church? You know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy, you know, sometimes. And I think a lot of people have some frustrations with all the churches that we have, you know, because there are so many.
Right.
What's your read on that? I guess I would say is like, you know, there's so many churches, and it's hard to pick one. And like, why are there so many? Do you think?
I mean, you want the honest answer, right? You know, I am. This is one opinion, of course, but ultimately, I think that people kind of get together in their groups, right? So it's like you go where you're comfortable, and I think there's absolutely very sincere, you know, godly people who are like, hey, I want to minister in Tyler and just be a blessing to the community and everything, and that's super valuable and definitely needed. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm trying to remember, is it Maine that's the least church city in America? You know, I mean, it's so, what is the word, congested, you know, it's
Right.
not evenly spread out. And I think at the end of the day, it's ultimately about comfort probably. And like, I'm here too, right? So I'm not like throwing people under the bus. Like I get it. But I think like you kind of want to be in your groups and be with the people that are most like you. And so, you know, whether it's, hey, here's the types of schools that I want my kids to go to, or here's the type of community or whatever, like, so this community is already thriving. And so let's go and be a part of that instead of, really doing the hard work of like, where is this most needed? Because if you're asking that question, where is this most needed? You're not going to end up in Tyler, you know, my opinion. You know, not that there are always going to be people that just need love, need, you know, need just ministry, I suppose. But like, just as far as the sheer numbers, like we kind of got it covered, right? So
yeah, and that could be, you know, debatable, of course. But that's a great point. That's a great point because, you know, I was reading a blog post from Seth Godin, one of my favorite writers.
Yeah, love Seth Godin.
And he's got a brilliant quote. When it comes to community building, he talks about and marketing, how it's kind of connected, is that people like us do things like this.
Yes.
And it's a mantra for me. And I think it's valuable in this conversation because, you know, the person that I was when I was growing up in a Methodist church is different now than I was. I'm older. You know, I grew up in a small town Methodist church.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you move out, like I visited one of the big non-denominational churches, and they do worship and services way different than the traditional little small town Methodist church does, right?
Totally.
And I needed it at that time. Yeah. And those were the type of people that I started to learn from and grow from in my faith journey and, you know, as a person in general, you know, but then there was a time where I said, you know, I'm out. Yeah. I'm done. You know, it was like one huge Christmas production or, you know, and I was like, you know, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. And then, you know, so I see it in that way of, you know, not all Christians want to stay in the same church forever. And, you know, you do want to feel comfortable and there's a lot of different flavors of comfortable. Like sometimes, you know, I think there's like a 50-50 split, I would say, of people who are comfortable in jeans. You know, some people just aren't comfortable in jeans. I'm comfortable in jeans. How about you?
I like jeans.
Yeah, me too. So, but equally, there are people who are like, jeans, screw that. I don't want to do it, you know? Right. And, you know, it's all about that comfort level. And that's where the denominations come in, maybe, and really the flavor of how you like your church delivered, which is an interesting kind of thing. I think it's really great. And I'm putting Soma under the bus a little bit. Not under the bus, but I think it's so funny just to see how the church has evolved over time. Because where Soma's located now, my wife and I visited weeks back, you know, it's that brick building, which is your traditional church. Yeah. And then, you know, at some point that traditional church had built a modern kind of center for the youth, which is like a modern metal building, and it's nice and what have you. And now that Soma's there, that metal building's the main sanctuary for the church, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah. They were using it that way before,
like,
but
well, it's
yeah, yeah. No,
I think it's funny how like it just shows like an illustrative point of a visual point of like where the church has kind of moved in terms of comfort, because
totally.
like we're more comfortable in this kind of more modern, nicer, I guess nicer, but it's just a building at the end of the day,
right?
So I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
amusing. Not
yeah,
funny.
It's also, I think the room where we meet is twice as big as the room in the other room. So it's so it makes a difference. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I think at the end of the day, people are here again because it is just where they feel the most comfortable and everything, and we're probably not. I don't know. I think we're not asking the questions that the people outside of our community are asking. So we kind of look a certain way. We, I don't know, like you kind of like what you're saying, you grow to look like and act like the people that you're most around, and that attracts more and more of people like you. And so it just kind of grows that community and everything. And so, yeah.
Diversity has to be a very intentional thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Diversity is it's beautiful as long as you're not the one doing it.
It could be hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult to do. And, people just like what they like,
Totally.
a lot of times. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I think a lot of times, when you talk about like denominations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a small town, it was really fun because there was one high school and it was like small, and like some of your friends went to the Baptist church and some of your friends went to our church, the Methodist church.
Yeah, right.
And then we have like a friendly rivalry of like which one's better.
Oh, yeah.
Like just because, it's just kind of a fun thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't mean that either are necessarily wrong. It just is what it is. It's your comfort level and to some degree.
Yeah.
When you think about, you mentioned kind of reaching out of your church, reaching out of the comfort zone kind of, and getting people outside of the church community. Maybe you're kind of the target audience that you're trying to reach. What's your what do you think about that? Like, how do you think about, evangelism kind of today?
Yeah, evangelism is evangelism and outreach, and trying to make converts, I suppose. I don't know. You think about it like in marketing terms, it's like you're really trying to sell a product, right? And that product is Jesus. So I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing, but like if you look back on what evangelism has looked like, there's everything from a person, going up and handing somebody a tract,
right?
Back in the, I guess, 80s, 90s. It's like, hey,
today.
Does it? I mean, I don't think it's happened to me a lot in a long time, but I feel like that was the way to evangelize back then. Especially, you walk in the, looks like there's a tip on the table, and then it's a $20 bill. You're talking to a former
server, man. I've got poems about that.
Oh no, and it's like a $20 bill, and you open it, and it's like, here's the most priceless gift or whatever. It's exactly. Jesus, and it's like, dude,
exactly.
Where's my freaking tip? And I don't know, everything in between.
Choir, pardon the pun.
Yeah, and everything in between. I mean, there's I've heard him called bullhorn guy, right? The guy that's like got the sign and telling people they're going to hell and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, so I think evangelism maybe conjures up some weird images in people's minds. At the end of the day, like I think that it's important to share kind of where you're coming from and share your perspective, and probably most important to live it, to do the actions and really be the love and not just talk about it, So yeah, I think, I don't know, I think that the kind of the frustrating thing to me, to kind of go back to what you were talking about, we'll just look at at kind of my audience, my target audience or whatever, is the reason that I'm passionate about that group of people is because I think that there is a sense in which they just feel homeless. It's like I'm not just like I am a Christian, or at least faith is important to me in some way, shape, or form, but I can't look like this. And if it looks like this, I can't be a part of it. And so there's this frustration where you kind of feel homeless. You're like, I mean, I want to belong here, but I just don't, And so, yeah, I mean, I think that that's a huge, huge part of really even what pushes me to write and talk about the things that I do is because I want to. So my tagline, I suppose, on my blog is, so it's honestchristian.org. What is it? Doubts, fears, and failures welcome. And just the idea of like, hey, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be honest about it and to just share where you're coming from and to be who you are and say, I'm frustrated and I'm struggling here. And, even I think for me, I feel like I go through that off and on and just, I don't know, just want to be honest about it and go like, that is Christianity. And this idea that, I don't know. I heard someone talk about this. Actually, I read a blog about it the other day. Was this idea of, I don't know if you've ever seen or know anything about the movie, what is it? God's Not Dead. You heard of that?
I've tried to watch it once, I think.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm aware of it though.
Yeah. It's
like the most famous apologetics in the discipline of apologetics has gotten in the past like 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
As far as broad adoption.
Yeah. And, I mean, if you like the movie, that's totally fine.
Apologetics is defense of the faith.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I think that persona is kind of like what people think of, what Christians think of as like, it's kind of this, oh, well, here's the atheist professor, and he's actually an idiot. And all you have to do is say these things, and then like you're good to go. And so then, Christians kind of are like, oh, well, that's who I'm going to be. And so they come and they feel confident, and then they go to college or whatever. And it's like they're destroyed because it's not that simple. Life is not that simple, and it's really messy. And like the people who don't think like you have reasons for that. And those reasons are very important to them. And a one-liner is not going to fix that. And so anyway, all that to say, like, that's the reason why I'm like, man, like, let's be honest about where we're at and where we're coming from and who we are, because it matters. And so anyway, so yeah, and I think maybe to go all the way back to your very first question, you were asking kind of the balance between kind of marketing yourself, kind of how did you say it? Like the business side and the art side, right?
Right, the science and the art, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I think that ultimately the difference is like, I kind of think of it, compromise everywhere you can, and then like hold fast to what is true. And so that's the same thing even as I approach art is like these are the things I care about, but I'm going to do everything I can to promote them and to to market myself and to look like the people that I want to engage and to speak their language. But like the whole reason I'm doing this is because I care about it. And so I think that's, I don't know, to me, that's the answer is like, excuse me, is if you don't care about what you're doing, then just stop, right? Like, so I don't know, to me, I'm like, yeah, market all you want. I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. I know other people do, like, I don't want to market myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, I mean, play the game, like do it all, but do it with sincerity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, I think, in this conversation, particularly because we're talking about faith, and then like, you don't really hear a lot of the conversation about like the marketing of faith.
Yeah.
It can like, just the conversation itself can make a lot of people uneasy.
Oh yeah.
Because they're like, how dare you bastardize, potentially, how dare you bastardize the faith by influencing it with all this marketing and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where, because on a fundamental level, people know that it's not all about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also important because you've got to communicate it and you've got to reach people.
Yeah.
I mean, back in Jesus' day, what did he do? Well, he gathered, 12 people and made it, he got people to talk about it. By really just communicating what he felt honestly. And, I'm totally like, not doing Jesus justice right here, but you know what I mean? Like he went Sermon on the Mount. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He went to the mountain and talked to people.
Got an audience.
And got an audience.
Totally.
That's how you had to do it.
Yeah.
Fast forward, we have, Facebook and graphic designers and all this other stuff that is, they're tools of the trade. But you're right in that the intent matters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about catching somebody.
Yeah.
And, the apologetic type tool, I can say this and then, I might have an edge.
Yeah.
It's a tool. But if you use it in a bad way, then you become a tool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it is a blend of the art and science of, what in your toolkit.
Yeah.
And saying all those things or doing all those things with the grace and what did you put? How did you say it? That's where integrity comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's integrity. And that's where, the drive thing, I'm kind of plugging my own deal here, but, drive, dedication, relationship, integrity, that's important too.
Yeah.
You have to have it because you can build all these relationships on a false pretense for only so long. You'll get found out eventually.
Yeah.
And that's what, has wrecked the word or the term or the title of Christian in a lot of ways for a lot of people, because people say, I know that Christians shouldn't act like this.
Right.
And here we go. Here's my reason because of, hypocrisy. And, I see it as a unfortunate thing, regardless of, where I am currently in my faith journey. I see it as a unfortunate thing because to take, one's failed example and throw out the baby with the bathwater,
mm-hmm.
It spoils the opportunity for immense growth, personal growth.
Yeah.
Because there's so much treasure to be found if you're open to finding it.
Yeah.
So integrity is definitely a super important piece. It's all about the intent that you're coming to it with. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's see. As far as kind of transition into company, so strong communication, strong community, strong company, kind of putting it all together in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we say company, I talk about, the business that you're building or the company that you keep. So like in a personal company, but also, the business company. I do want to, since we're kind of, we're coming out of the church talk here, I do kind of want to talk about like, the business of church,
mm-hmm.
Like that's a difficult conversation too, because like,
totally.
We live in a city with a mega church.
You're right.
And we live in a state with, I think, the biggest mega church.
I think so. Yeah.
And
like ever.
What's his name?
Joel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, our good friend Joel, friend of the podcast. So like, what do you think about like mega churches and, that whole deal? Because like, it's a difficult pill for a lot of people to swallow. And for many reasons, and I'll just kind of like, I see it in two ways of, there's an immense amount of people being served in some way
mm-hmm.
there.
Right.
You get that many people together, willingly to come back week after week after week.
Right.
They're getting something
mm-hmm.
out of it of value. And if you put the money into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they do in terms of mission work or philanthropy or giving. And I think 95% of people don't,
right.
There's a very small subset of people who actually know where all that stuff is going.
Yeah.
And some of that is, some of that unknown could be problematic. Where it's like, where is the money going?
Right.
Because is it going to the jet? Is it going to the, or what have you? But the only thing that a lot of detractors focus on is that and not the good. Now, I'm speaking completely out of ignorance because I have no idea what they do.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to criticize because I don't know enough. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, it's, it can be problematic to have, to grow that large and to, it's a thorny problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To pick apart. But anyway, that's just kind of one fleeting thought that I had. What's your take on kind of the mega church and the when church is big business like that?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like, so I'm going to say, to me, the big thing is to not over spiritualize what shouldn't be over spiritualized. And so to me, I'm like, if you have influence, I don't know. I think of it this way. If you're saying something that is valuable, then like people should hear it, and again, I'm like, hey, as many people as you can get to hear it, awesome. If it is actually something of value that's like, bringing people hope and it's truth, then that's awesome. Like, pursue that. And to me, and this this may be getting into an interesting, I guess, perspective, but to me, I think the hard thing with church is that it is like, it's about God, And so what I mean by that is I've heard, and I get it. I don't want to be judgmental, but I've just heard a lot of very large, very successful church planters, pastors who are, reaching tens of thousands, even, if you count social media, podcast downloads, hundreds of thousands of people every week. And then they'll be in an interview and, hey, so tell me how all this started, how did you get here? And the answer is something like, oh, it was just all the Lord. And, I just started preaching one day and all of a sudden things exploded. And I'm like, that's not true, and I'm like, I'm not like, yeah, you're a great communicator, but there is he's not a pastor anymore, but there was a pastor down the road that I've visited his church several times, and one of the greatest communicators I've ever heard in my entire life. 50 people in his church. So it's like the ability to say something well is like, that is essential, but it's not the only thing, and it again kind of comes back to marketing and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, please don't, for the sake of like trying to make it sound spiritual and kind of this like false dichotomy of this like false sense of humility where it's like, oh, it was all the Lord, but it's like, yeah, it was the Lord, and it was you working hard to grow your social media audience, and it was you, it's like, no, you were putting work into it, and that's okay, but just be honest about it, like don't try to over spiritualize everything and make it seem like it was more miraculous than it really was. It's like, you didn't just show up and 10,000 people, showed up at your doorstep. You put work into this.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So yeah, I guess all that to say to sum that up, my thought is like, for me, business marketing, like, do it, but just be honest about it. Don't try to make it seem like it was something that it wasn't. Just be honest. Yeah, this is the effort that we put into people hearing our message because we believe in what we have to say. So
yeah, and there's really not a lot. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with it. If there's a lot of people and there's a lot of people being served, then they're being served.
Totally.
And of course, we should hold leaders accountable.
Yeah.
With the resources that they have.
Yeah.
We should, and I think I'm not saying that it's unwarranted when leaders of a very high degree are criticized because sometimes they should be. But at the same time, I'm not going to let the bad actors of a small percentage completely discredit a particular worldview, Yeah. And I'm afraid that happens too often.
Yeah.
People don't give things a chance just because they have one convenient example.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I get it too. I don't know. I feel like at the same time, you should look, if you're an aspiring pastor or whatever, and you're trying to, there definitely is that, like, are you doing it because you believe in what you have to say and you want to grow your influence? Or are you doing it because this is what I'm good at and I also want to be rich and famous, And it's like, that definitely becomes like, where is your motives at,
Yeah.
If it's about power and about wealth rather than about influence, then that matters. And that's probably should be the case for anything, right? I mean, whether it's Christianity or not, whether it's being a pastor or not, it's like, is your absolute priority to have power and to like gain power? Or is it to have influence because you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like that's definitely kind of goes either way, but I don't know. To me, I'm like, you should be very cautious in pursuing anything that gives you power. And if anything, I don't know, I feel like I keep seeing almost every week a pastor, mega church, everybody knows him pastor that is like fallen into sin and is sleeping with secretary or something like that, and it's like, okay, this should make us all a little more cautious than just going, I want to be famous too. It's like, let's, I don't know. To me, I went to a big conference and at a mega church. I was walking around the property and it was like beautiful, amazing. But at the same time, it kind of hit me like, if I'm the main guy and I'm walking around this property, like, I don't think there's anything that could prevent me from thinking I am just fantastic, like this was me.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, so I think, I mean, there's definitely a both and for sure.
Yeah. And you're right in that I think that's the case with everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And, if it's you growing your blog or if it's me, trying to grow the podcast,
yeah.
I think about that. I tried to really say, I don't want to put this all about me. I don't want it to be the Aaron Dunn Show. So I named it the Strong Calm Podcast.
Right.
Because I want it not to be Aaron's Aaron has all these things and it's all about me. I want it to be about the ideas of communication community. That's what I want it to be about, you know? And of course, there is the sense, there is that motive for me of like, yeah, I want to grow. I want to get more attention.
Right.
But at the same time, I want to keep the integrity. I want to keep the main thing, which is the craft that I'm passionate about, and helping other people. Help other people with the product of the podcast, which is conversations with driven individuals.
Right.
How to grow in your communication, how to grow in your community building. Like, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And, you're saying that with the churches too. It's like the main thing's got to be the main thing.
Right.
What are you actually doing to serve other people? And service is like so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, I think you obviously have to, I don't know, I feel like you have to be honest with yourself as well. Like, I don't think at the same time, am I just completely being selfless when I'm, doing all this stuff? I'm like, hey, I got 10,000 people that I'm influencing every month. Like, no, like people are finding my blog and that's freaking awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I feel really cool about that, and,
Sure.
and I'm like, dude, this is all. And so, I don't know, like, I think the important thing is to keep it in balance and always just keep that in check. Not to be like, yeah, my goal is to just never become about,
right.
Becoming famous. Is like, that's always going to be in there somewhere. At least for me, my wife is like, I don't really want an audience. I'm like, I would be totally content just being in the background and, but for me, I'm like, no, like I kind of do, and so I think, I don't know, just being honest about it and having people in your life to hold you accountable and be like, where's your heart at, and and everything. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's all about the balance.
Yeah.
So, kind of wrapping up, we're wrapping up on the hour here. Any last tips in terms of, either helping people make money from blogging or the importance of SEO or church or anything. You got anything else that you want to kind of share with anybody?
Yeah, so I'll talk about basically the idea of making a career from your passions. And it's not something I've fully achieved yet, but I feel like I'm in a very good place pursuing that confidently. And I think that the key for me, this is not for everyone, but to me, I think it's kind of come to a place where I'm willing to compromise, at least while I'm putting the work into it. So if it was me just going, hey, this is what I want to do. I just want to write about, Christianity and all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm going to do. Then it's like, that's great. And I'll continue making my, $50 to $100 an article and have to do that on the side for the rest of my life. Or I can find ways to do what I love in scenarios that may not be like at the forefront of what I'm passionate about, but they're still in that area. So, you and I have even started working together a little bit in the area of copywriting. So, I'm writing for the websites of, different businesses and stuff. I wrote the content for a window treatment, window blinds company. Like, if you're asking me, dude, what are the top 10 things you're passionate about? Window blinds is not on that list, okay? But I'm passionate about writing. And
Right.
So you can either pursue what you want to do exactly the way you want to do it. It has to look like this and it can't look like anything else. Or you can go, what are ways I can express myself through writing in different scenarios? And I think that's really valuable, at least while you're developing yourself and growing your influence, because otherwise you'll just be, a 9 to 5 and then wake up at 4 a.m. and, crank out a couple articles, which I do that. But at the same time, I want to move in the direction of like writing is what I am. And that may not mean, at least for a while, that I just blog and I make tens of thousands of dollars every week. Like, probably not, but I write and I can find different avenues to do that. So I think becoming comfortable with the kind of what you started the conversation with, like with art, still having a sacred place, but that you can mold it to look like what it needs to look like in the given scenario, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, I think that's my big thing is just this idea of like kind of find that thing that you love and find ways to mold it into what it needs to look like in order to be profitable, so that you can do what you love full time in a way that it may not look exactly like what you want, but you're doing, like, I'm a writer full time. That's freaking awesome, And so just learning how to be okay with things not looking exactly the way you want, but that you are molding your art, the thing that you're passionate about, to fit these different scenarios and pursuits.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. That's strong calm.
Strong calm.
Ken, I appreciate you joining the podcast today.
Yeah.
Awesome. Best of luck on Honest Christian, and go visit the guy. Subscribe and stuff.
Yeah, do it.
All right,
brother.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right, bud.